I am going to use this cane that, gosh, 25, 30 years ago, 25 years ago, I learned as being a brain cane. That's what it was called in Eastern Europe. And I will place a link in the description of the video where you can see how to make it on my website. And you see I have it in two colors, two different color combinations. What I do first is to take a piece and reduce it to a much smaller size, because what we want to do is to make another set of beads that will be much smaller but with pretty much the same effect. What happens, those swirly beads, depending on what you put on them, you can get some beautiful effects, and I find that this specific cane can give very nice effects. And combining blue and a pale orange or a light brown is always very a very nice combination, especially when you have some white and some black in there. So there you see I have already reduced the other cane, and now I have a mix of half and half white pearl and translucent, and I will be cutting from a log that's about almost 3/4 of an inch thick, two pieces that are 1/4 of an inch and two pieces that are 3/4 of an inch. So I would have equally sized beads. And then of course I will be making them in my hands round. Make sure that you press really hard so you don't have any folding lines. And then I will take 2 slices from each of the canes, and I want to remove that wrapping because it wouldn't do that nice with the wrapping. And then I put slices of each cane on each bead, kind of like opposite, and again press really hard so you don't have any kind of folding lines. You cannot see where the cane slice ends on the bead. And then take your acrylic block and start swirling until you obtain the famous swirl in the middle. Everything that's on the side will climb towards the middle, and then we'll start twirling. Once you obtain your swirl, then gently start pressing down so you can form a fairly flattened swirly bead. Do the same for both beads, and then you do the same thing for the small beads. Remember, and on the small beads I did not remove the wrapping, I just left it where it was. But do also 2 twirly beads and then flatten them a little bit more than you flattened the big ones. On the small ones I use my needle tool to poke holes, but on the big ones I will just use my drill, and they are good to go in the oven. I bake them for 45 minutes. And now I will be taking my polyfast because they are fairly smooth. I am starting with a 500, and then I will be using a 2000 grit, of course using some water and with a little bit of dish detergent until they are very nice and smooth. And they need to be thoroughly rinsed. You see I'm using the sponge head that kind of bends around the bead, so you can do a great job. Then I will be using my flex shaft with one of those little wheels that I told you about that are absolutely awesome. Remember that you can find in my Amazon influencer store pretty much everything that I'm using here, and if it's not, then I will mention where you can get it from. And I am buffing really nicely all the beads, the big ones and the small ones. And you can see you can get a beautiful buff with the flex shaft, and quite fast as well. I honestly find buffing a very, very relaxing time, because even if it's noisy, but it's still very relaxing and very satisfying to see how the pieces get all nice and shiny. Ain't that beautiful? I did pierce the hole in the bead before I started buffing. Make sure that you hold your bead properly, otherwise it will throw it out of your hand. That's what happened with that first one. Remember that I have issues pinching and holding and grasping, so I had to retrieve it from the floor and finish it. But even on the small ones you can still do a great job with the flex shaft, and besides you don't have my hands issues. Let's do the second one now and see how from a all dull finish you get this beautiful shine. Make sure that you have the beads perfectly buffed all over the place and you didn't miss any spots. After which, let's put the earrings together. I'm using a 24 gauge wire, and I will make a coiled loop there and then cut the excess wire, and then make sure that that itty bitty piece that's left there is well tucked in so it wouldn't cause any kind of scratches. Then I will put some bead caps and the small bead and another bead cap, after which I will make another looped eye. Sometimes it's not a good idea to magnetize your pliers, because see, for example, I have that bead cap that has the tendency to lift up to get closer to my needle nose because it's magnetized, the pliers. And again, make sure that you tuck in that itty bitty end, and all you have to do is to place your earring on the earring piece. After which, there's one more thing to do, because when you look at them you realize that you put them backwards, so you have to go back and undo the little eye at the earring and put them in the proper position, because of course it had to be on both earrings. But you know what? It's fixable. Yep, the second one is messed up too. Darn it. It's fixable. But there you go. You have a pretty pair of twirly, squiggly beads earrings. Happy claying!